sports heroes, musicians, singers, entertainers, war heroes. They all have one thing in common. It comes to an end. How did they become famous? How did they die? And where do they rest now? I'm Ed Doyle, and I'm your host for Tales of Fame and Fate. When rock and roll first made its debut in America, many people were stunned, some were shocked, and even some were appalled at this new type of music that was loaded with sexual references aimed at teenage listeners from artists such as Chuck Berry and Billie Holiday. One man was positive that he could bring to rock and roll a wholesome, real-life feel about love and the kind of heartbreak and crying that happens only once in a lifetime, even showing that it's okay for a man to cry and feel pain. This is the tale of the fame and fate of a man who had one of the most unique and beautiful romantic sounds that at one time had 22 singles on the Billboard charts, 8 of them being in the top 10, and more than 30 million records being sold, doing exactly what he set out to do, his way, and becoming a legend doing what he loved most. On April 23rd, 1936 at 3:30 p.m. in Vernon, Texas, Nadine and Orbie Lee welcomed into their lives their new son, Roy Kelton Orbison. The music bug hit Roy at a very young age, and for his 6th birthday, Roy pleaded with his father to buy him a harmonica. Unfortunately, Orbison would experience his first bit of sorrow, as instead of a harmonica, which he longed for, his father gave him a guitar. Did it ruin his craving to play music? On the contrary, Orbison quickly became fond of the new instrument and practiced hard. He learned how to play from his father, Orbie Lee, and even from his uncle, Charlie Orbison, and his mother's brother, Kenneth Schultz. With his natural gift of music, Roy learned to play the guitar quickly, and in the beginning, it was a way that young Roy could stay up late by playing with the grown-ups when the neighbors would all get together. But there was something deeper inside him that was growing, and Roy knew that someday he would bring it to the world. In 1942, the Orbison family moved to Fort Worth, hoping to find better employment in the munitions and aircraft factories that were now booming because of America's entry into World War II. With better employment and better wages, everything started to seem good for the Orbison family. But in 1944, Roy and his older brother Grady were hit by the polio epidemic and were sent back to Vernon to live with their grandmother. In 1945, at the age of only 11 years old, Roy Orbison entered a talent contest that the local radio station KVWC was sponsoring. Roy won the contest and claimed the first prize of $15, which Roy, being the generous, caring boy that he was, took $750 of it, half of the winnings, and gave it to his buddy for carrying his guitar for him. Roy Orbison's fame began by winning that contest, as he was given his own show airing every Saturday night, playing the same few songs each time. The following year, the Orbison family reunited and moved on to Wink, Texas. It was there in Wink, Texas that young Roy Orbison would form his first band. The band was known as the Wink Westerners. For the next 6 years, Roy and his band would do what most aspiring musicians would have to do to live. They played at school dances, the local community center, and even at the local Lions Club. And when not playing, Roy worked jobs such as shoveling tar, chopping steel in the oil fields, and even painting water towers. One fateful night, while playing at the local Lions Club, Orbison and the band was offered a paying gig to play for an upcoming function. The money was as much as an entire week of hard work, so Orbison jumped at the offer. However, they only knew 5 songs. The Wink Westerners quickly learned more songs, practicing hard after that, and began to finally start getting paying gigs. In 1954, Roy graduated high school and in the fall began attending North Texas State College. 2 of Roy's college buddies, Dick Penner and Wade Moore, wrote a song called The Ooby Dooby. Roy performed it and Dick Penner arranged for him and Roy to record the song at the studio belonging to Jim Beck. What was so exciting about picking this particular studio was the fact that Beck had been the driving force in the discovery of performers like Lefty Frizzell and Marty Robbins, who both signed contracts with Columbia Records. Roy was sure that this was his big break and that this would surely land him a contract with Columbia. But alas, it would not be so. Roy enrolled at Odessa Junior College in the fall of '55 to major in geology. Quickly, however, he changed to history and English, a sign that aside from music, he really did not have a solid direction. Still playing with the band, Roy and his friends moved into an apartment together, and after adding a couple of new members to the band, decided to rename themselves and would now be known as the Teen Kings. Still playing when and wherever they could for whatever they could get for money, Roy and the Teen Kings were approached at one of their gigs by Weldon Rogers. Rogers, a local businessman, and his partner, Chester Oliver, were embarking on a new venture of their own, a record label named Jewel. Rogers told them that he wanted to record them for the new label's first recording session. They recorded the Clovers' Trying to Get to You and their original Ooby Dooby. And with the record in hand, Roy traveled to West Texas to see Cecil Hollyfield, a well-known record dealer. Hollyfield liked what he heard and made a call to none other than Sam Phillips, owner of Sun Records. And a few days later, Hollyfield dialed up Roy and told him that Sam Phillips wanted them in Memphis in 3 days for a recording session for Sun Records. With the newly recorded Ooby Dooby, Trying to Get to You, and Go Go Go, Bob Neal, owner of Stotts Incorporated, heard the songs and signed the band to a contract. He booked them on sort of a trial tour, opening for artists such as Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and more. In 1956, with only one of their songs barely making the charts, the band split up, and Roy would use studio musicians for other recordings until he decided to leave Sun Records in 1958. Roy went on to write songs in his own style and wrote songs for such artists as the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Ricky Nelson. Orbison quickly was offered another contract with Monument Records, and along with co-writer Joe Melson, Orbison's unique sound hit the airwaves, and Only the Lonely climbed the Billboard charts all the way to #2 and #1 in the UK. Roy's fame in part was due to Monument Records being willing to take a chance on this brand new sound that Orbison had. But with Monument's resources and Roy's uniqueness, passion poured from Orbison's heart, and for the next 4 years, there would be what was called the unbroken string of top 40 hits. Orbison recorded the songs like Crying, Dream Baby, Blue Bayou, and more. Roy Orbison became the top-selling American artist and became world famous. In 1963, Roy Orbison accepted an invitation to tour in England with a new band that he and very few had ever heard of in the States. They were known as the Beatles. The tour was sold out in one day, and at the first show, Roy Orbison did 14 encores before the Beatles could even take the stage. Roy would continue touring with such names as the Beach Boys and even the Rolling Stones. As more record offers came in, Roy decided that he would leave Monument Records and sign with MGM. A decision, however, that would soon prove to not be as good as Roy had hoped it would be. MGM wanted to crank out records, and Roy was just one of many on the label's list of artists. Soon, what was once Orbison's passion would become work and would start to take its toll on him. Under pressure to crank out new songs, the singer's mood was heading in the wrong direction. Then on June 6, 1966, tragedy would enter Orbison's life, as he and his wife Claudette decided to take some time off and head out on their motorcycle for a vacation. A truck driver pulled out into the road, hitting Claudette's motorcycle. An hour later, Claudette, only 25 years old, died in Orbison's arms. Orbison was devastated at the loss of his wife and immersed himself into his work in a hope to escape the pain that he suffered so. Just 2 years later, tragedy would once again hit Roy Orbison as 2 of his children perished in a house fire at their Henderson home. For a while, Roy could not bring himself to write anything, heartbroken from his wife's death and now the death of his 2 sons. Orbison had a strong heart though, and because of the type of man that he was, with the love that he had for life and the heart of a lion, Roy managed to summon a positive attitude, and while he grieved, he pushed himself to tour again. Roy's MGM contract would end in 1973, and he would go on to sign a contract with Mercury Records. But with Mercury, Orbison would have no hit songs. When confronted about his sliding popularity and lack of new hits, Orbison, being the confident showman that he was, would often say that it didn't matter because somewhere in the world he had a hit on the charts. Orbison's grueling, unending touring, his heavy smoking habit, and an unhealthy lifestyle of being on the road took its toll on Roy. And in 1978, Orbison would undergo open heart surgery in Nashville, Tennessee. But a mere 3 weeks after the surgery, some said just to prove that he could do it, Orbison went back on the road. Things were looking up for Orbison's dwindling career, and it was given a second breath. In 1985, Orbison re-recorded his greatest hits, and his song Dreams would be used in the movie Blue Velvet, which helped put Roy Orbison right back in the limelight. In 1987, Roy Orbison was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And in 1988, Roy would do a filming for Cinemax along with stars Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Costello, K.D. Lang, and more, titled Roy Orbison and Friends, A Black and White Night. His collaboration with Jeff Lynne was magical and actually led to the project known as the Traveling Wilburys, featuring Roy Orbison, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne, Tom Petty, and Bob Dylan. In 1989, touring in Europe, Roy Orbison was back. His look, his feel, the new ponytail, everything that made Roy Orbison was back and better than ever. Coming home from Europe, Roy played his last show in Highland Heights, Ohio. Orbison was in the process of planning a big American and European tour for the following year, but decided that he would take a little time off for himself. On Tuesday, December 6th, 1988, Roy went into Nashville to do some holiday shopping. That afternoon, while out and about, Orbison complained of chest pains and returned to his mother's house to rest. Just before midnight that same evening, Orbison collapsed on the floor. Roy Orbison at age 52, was dead. It was determined that he had suffered a massive heart attack. Roy Orbison was loved by millions. His music still plays and his records are still being sold. But as many adoring fans often visit the final resting places of the heroes to pay their final respects, strangely, it's somewhat difficult to do so in the case of Roy Orbison, as he rests when no one can easily find him. Roy Orbison is buried in an unmarked grave here in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. Many have unknowingly stepped right over him, looking for other famous graves like Donna Reed, who's buried very close to Roy. The Orbison family had often said that a beautiful black granite gravestone was something that always was in the works. But to this day, it still has never happened. If you do wish to pay your respects and tell him that you're the one crying, simply glance down and look at the patch of grass that lies right between the markers of Frank Wright Tuttle and Grandma Martha Monroe.